The high storm blowing outside the enormous window presented a view that Kaladin often saw, but others rarely knew. Flashing lightning, a swirling tempest, power, raw and unchained. Kaladin stepped off the pursuer's decaying husk and walked forward, toward the enemy. The pursuer searched around, likely realizing how large his audience was, hundreds watching. He lived by lore, by reputation. He always killed anyone who killed him. He won each conflict eventually. Now, he saw that crumbling. Kaladin could hear it in the increasingly panicked rhythm the pursuer hummed, saw it in his eyes.
Run. Flee. I'll chase you. I will never stop. I am eternal. I am the storm.
The pursuer stumbled back, but then encountered his soldiers holding the perimeter. Behind them, humans gawked, their foreheads painted.
Has it been long enough, do you think? Are the others free?
Hopefully. But I don't think they'll be able to escape into the high storm.
And they'll have to come out here, and we'll have to push for the Crystal Pillar Room.
So looked toward the infirmary.
Why haven't they appeared yet?
Once we defeat the pursuer, when he breaks and runs, we'll find out.
Kaladin unhooked Navani's device from his waist.
Something's wrong. Something dark.
Kaladin stepped to the very center of the atrium, marked by a swirling pattern of strata. He pointed his knife at the pursuer.
Last body! Come fight, and we'll see who dies. We'll see if your reputation survives the hour.
The pursuer, to his credit, came charging in. As he arrived, grabbing Kaladin pressed Navani's device against the pursuer's chest and lashed the bar down, binding it in place. It launched backward, carrying the pursuer with it. He slammed into the glass of the window. His carapace had cracked as he struck. He shook himself, recovering quickly, but didn't heal.
He's used up his void light.
With effort, the pursuer struggled to move the device and managed to extricate himself from it, leaving it pressed to the window, which was smeared with his orange blood. More blood dripped from the cracked carapace at his chest. Kaladin stalked toward him, holding the knife.
Flee.
Pursuer's eyes widened. He stepped to the side, toward his soldiers.
Flee!
The creature was silent. No humming, no speaking.
Run from me!
He did, dripping blood and shoving his way past the singer's soldiers. He'd retreated from previous battles, but this time they both knew it meant something different. This creature was no longer the pursuer. He knew it. The singers knew it, and the humans watching behind and above knew it.
Stormblessed! Stormblessed!
Stormblessed!
Glory spren burst in the air. Trembling, Kaladin retrieved and deactivated Navani's device, then returned to the center of the room. He could feel their energy propelling him, a counter to the darkness. He turned toward the infirmary. The door had been opened.
When did that happen?
He stepped toward it, but could see the radiance in their lines on the floor, covered in sheets.
Why aren't they up and awake? Are they feigning? That could work. Pretending they're still asleep.
Something dropped from above. A body hit the ground in front of Kaladin, skull first. It rolled, and Kaladin saw burned-out eyes, a terribly familiar, bearded face. A face that had smiled at him countless times, cursed at him an equal number, but had always been there when everything else went dark.
Teft. Teft is dead.
Kaladin knelt over the body. Moash landed a short distance from where Kaladin knelt. Several of the watching soldiers stepped toward the Windrunner, but Moash raised his hand and stopped them. The Heavenly Ones hovered down around him.
No, leave him be. This is how we win.
Moash knew exactly what Kaladin was feeling. That crushing sense of despair, that knowledge that nothing would be the same. Nothing could ever be the same. Light had left the world and could never be rekindled. Kaladin cradled Teft's corpse. He began to tremble and shake, becoming as insensate as he had when King Elakara died, as he had after Moash had killed Rashun. And if Kaladin responded that way to the deaths of his enemies, well, Teft dying would be worse. Far, far worse. Kaladin had been unraveling for years.
That is how you break a storm. He'll be useless from here on out. Make sure nobody touches him. I have something to do.
Moash walked into the infirmary room. At the rear was the model of the tower, intricate in its detail, cut into a cross-section, with one half on either side. He knelt and peered at a copy of the room with the crystal pillar. Beside it, produced in miniature, were a small crystal globe and gemstone. The fabrial glowed with a tiny light, barely visible.
The final node of the tower's defenses, placed where anyone who looked would see it, but think nothing of it. Raboniel knew, though. How long?
He suspected she'd figured it out days ago, and was stalling to continue her research here.
That one is trouble.
He summoned his blade, and used the tip to destroy the tiny fabrial. Then he walked over to the sectioned-off portion of the room. The child edge dancer lay here, tied up and unconscious, next to Kaladin's parents and brother. Odium was interested in the edge dancer, and Moash had been forbidden to kill her.
I hope I haven't struck her head too hard. I don't always control that as I should.
For now, he grabbed the gagged Lirin by his bound hands and dragged him out of the infirmary, until the pursuer came flying back as a shameful ribbon of light. The pursuer formed a body. Moash pushed Lirin into the creature's hands.
This is Stormblessed's father.
Where did you...
No, don't say it loudly. Don't draw Kaladin's attention. His father is insurance. Kaladin has huge issues with the man. If Kaladin somehow regains his senses, immediately kill his father in front of him.
This is nonsense. I could kill Stormblessed now.
Moash grabbed the pursuer and pointed at his face.
No, you know I have our master's blessing. You know I speak to command. You will not touch Stormblessed. You can't hurt him. You can't kill him.
He's just a man.
Don't touch him. If you interfere, it will awaken him to vengeance. We don't want that yet. There are two paths open to him. One is to take the route I did and give up his pain. The other is the route he should have taken long ago. The path where he raises the only hand that can kill Kaladin Stormblessed. His own.
The pursuer didn't like it, judging by the rhythm he hummed, but he accepted Kaladin's bound and gagged father, and seemed willing to stay put. Kaladin knelt before the storm, clinging to a dead man, shaking. Moash hesitated, searching inside himself, and he felt nothing, just coldness.
Good. I have reached my potential.
He looked to the fused.
Don't ruin this. I need to go kill a queen.
Kaladin clung to Teft's limp form and felt it all crumbling. The flimsy facade of confidence he had built to let himself fight. The way he pretended he was fine. Syl landed on his shoulder, arms wrapped around herself, and said nothing. What was there to say?
It's over. It's all just over. What is there to life if I can't protect the people I love?
Long ago, he'd promised himself he'd try one last time. He'd try to save the men of Bridge 4.
And I failed.
Teft had been so vibrant, so alive, so sturdy, and so constant. He'd finally defeated his own monsters, had really come into his own, claiming his radiance. He had been a wonderful, loving, amazing man.
He depended on me. Like Tien. Like 100 others. But I can't save them. I can't protect them.
Syl shrank in on herself. Kaladin wished he could shrink as well. Maybe if he'd lived as his father wanted, he could have avoided this.
I said I was fighting to protect. But I didn't end up protecting anything, did I? I just destroy, kill. Kaladin Stormblessed is dead.
Venli watched the human, so consumed by his grief that he knelt there, motionless for minutes on end, and they all watched. Silent heavenly ones, solemn guards, disbelieving humans. No one seemed to want to speak or even breathe.
This is how I should have felt upon losing my sister. Why don't I have the emotions of a normal person?
She'd been sad, but she didn't think she'd ever been so overcome by grief that she acted like Stormblessed. Timber pulsed comfortingly inside her. Everyone was different, and Venli was on the right path.
Except, there isn't really a point in returning to help now, is there? It is over.
Beside her, Leshwi descended until her feet touched the ground. Then she bowed her head. Show her, Timber pulsed, what you are.
What? Now?
Show her.
Reveal what I am in front of everyone.
Venli shrank at the thought, attuning the terrors. One by one, the other heavenly ones touched down, as if in respect. For an enemy. The pursuer shoved Lirin into Leshwi's hands.
This is stupidity. I can't believe we're all just standing here.
Leshwi hummed to spite. Then, amazingly, she pulled out a knife and cut Lirin's hands free. The pursuer pointed at Leshwi.
I have not forgotten how you tried to turn the Nine against me. You seek to destroy my legacy.
Your legacy is dead, defeated one. It died when you ran from him.
My legacy is untouched!
Venli stumbled back, afraid.
And this is complete madness! I will prove myself and continue my tradition!
No!
Leshwi passed the still gagged human to one of the other heavenly ones. She grabbed the pursuer, but he left a husk in her hand, exploding out as a ribbon of light to cross the atrium floor.
No!
The pursuer appeared above Stormblessed. The fused yanked a sharpened carapace spur off his arm. Then, holding it like a dagger, he grabbed the kneeling man by one shoulder. Kaladin Stormblessed looked up. Venli attuned the lost in return. The pursuer stabbed, but Stormblessed grabbed his arm and turned, becoming a blur of motion. He somehow twisted around so he was behind the pursuer, then found a knife somewhere on his person. Stormblessed slammed the knife at the pursuer's neck, who barely ejected from the husk in time. He reformed and tried to grab Stormblessed again. Kaladin rammed his dagger through the pursuer's arm. A knife toward the face followed, and the pursuer ejected yet again. When Stormblessed turned around, Venli saw his face, and she immediately attuned the terrors. Kaladin's eyes were glowing like a radiance, his face a mask of pain and anguish. But the eyes, she swore the light had a yellowish red cast to it.
Like...
The pursuer appeared near the soldiers at the perimeter by the wall.
Go! Attack him! Kill him! And then kill the other idiots! Your orders are chaos and death!
The soldiers charged forward and shied away. They wouldn't face Stormblessed in those eyes of his, so the pursuer was left with no choice but to engage. Venli didn't know if he realized that he was on his final body. Perhaps he knew he couldn't run this time, not and salvage any kind of reputation. Stormblessed dashed to him, and they met near the vast window, flashing with lightning. The pursuer tried to grab him, and Kaladin welcomed it, folding it into the deadly embrace, then expertly slamming them both up against the window. Kaladin pressed the pursuer to the glass. The storm outside flashed, shaking the tower, vibrating it and splashing it with light. In that moment, Kaladin did something to the window. As he stepped back, he left the pursuer stuck to the glass, immobilized and lacking the void light to eject his soul. Kaladin didn't attack. Instead, he reached down and infused the ground, but with power that didn't glow as strong as she thought it should. The pursuer's head, it was pulling forward against his neck, his eyes bulging. Then he realized that Stormblessed had infused the ground, then made it pull on the pursuer's head, but his body was stuck to the wall. Kaladin turned and strode toward the watching heavenly ones as the pursuer's head ripped from his body and slammed to the floor. Leshwi stepped out and met Kaladin.
Stormblessed, you have fought and won. Your loss is powerful, I know, as mortals are.
Kaladin shoved her aside. He was coming for Venli. She was sure of it. She braced herself, but he stalked past her, leaving her trembling to the terrors. Instead, Kaladin strode for the Heavenly One who was holding his father.
Of course.
That Heavenly One panicked as any would. she shot off into the air, carrying the man. 2 other Heavenly Ones followed. Stormblessed looked up and launched into the air using the strange fabrial that mimicked the lashings. Emily slumped to the ground, feeling worn out, though she hadn't done anything.
At least it's over.
But not for the soldiers from the Pursuer's personal army who gathered around his corpse, dead a second time to the same man. His reputation might be in shambles, but he was still fused. He would return. The soldiers turned toward the infirmary, remembering his last orders. They couldn't kill Stormblessed, but they could finish off the invalid Radiance. Above, Kaladin could barely see straight. He had only a vague memory of killing the Pursuer. He knew he'd done it, but remembering was hard. Thinking was hard. He soared upward, chasing the creatures who had taken his father.
He's managed to get the gag off.
Kaladin didn't actually believe he could save his father. It was as if Liren was already dead, and had screamed at Kaladin from damnation. Kaladin wasn't exactly certain why he followed, but he had to get up high.
Perhaps I can see better from up high.
Syl streaked ahead of him, entering the shafts that let lifts reach the final tiers of the tower. She landed on the topmost level of the Orthiru. Kaladin arrived after activating a second weight halfway through the flight, then swung himself over the railing and deactivated the device in one move. He landed facing a Heavenly One who tried to block his path. He left that Heavenly One broken and dying, then tore through the upper chambers.
Where? The roof. They'd make for the roof to escape.
He ran into the stairwell and up. He found another fused blocking the way. Kaladin slammed Navani's device into the fused's chest and locked it in place. He sent him flying away, up through the stairwell and off into the sky. Syl arrived, zipping around Kaladin.
Kaladin! I've forgotten!
What's happened? I can barely hear her.
But there was no time to waste. Kaladin burst out onto the top of the tower. The storm spread out around him. The last of the Heavenly Ones was here, holding Kaladin's father. Fused backed away.
Don't come a step closer, or your father dies!
Kaladin! I've forgotten the words!
Kaladin advanced on the Heavenly One, and in a panic she threw his father out into the blackness. Kaladin saw Liren's face for a brief moment before he vanished into the pit, the swirling storm and tempest. Kaladin scrambled to the edge of the tower and looked down. Suddenly he knew why he'd come this high. He knew where he was going.
I've stood on this ledge before, long ago in the rain.
This time, he jumped.